Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Preston. Today I'd like to talk about my M1102 military trailer. As I featured it on this channel many times, I've turned this into my overlanding trailer, my camping slash off-roading overlanding trailer. And if you've watched the channel at all, you've seen this out on many different adventures. I've actually owned this for almost 2 years, and it's been pulled by 4 different vehicles of mine. So I wanted to give you guys a rundown, overview of this trailer, and also list some pros and cons to using the M1102 trailer, mainly as using it as an overlanding trailer, but also just in general. This is something you can find used on government surplus websites, and you can also find them used on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. And these trailers were used by the U.S. military, and they were pulled by Humvees. There's 2 different variations of this. This is called the M1102. There's also one called the M1101. And they're pretty much exactly the same except for their carrying capacity. The M1102 has a shipping weight of 1,460 pounds, so that's basically empty, and a max gross vehicle weight of 4,200 pounds. So if you do the math, that's 2,740 pounds that you can put in this thing's cargo. Just here recently, I've replaced the original tires and wheels that come with the M1102. It comes with these 37-inch Goodyear tires that are specifically developed for the military. And they are extremely stout, extremely rugged, and so are the wheels. They have a run flat insert in them, so you don't really have to worry about them going flat. I mean, these things are made to be shot at in wartime and still keep rolling up to a certain speed. I forget exactly what it was, like 50 miles an hour or something you can run on them while flat. But the only problem with those is that they were extremely heavy and kind of hard to, if you have to change one, which you probably never will, quite cumbersome. And especially if you're gonna throw or bring a spare with you and throw the extra one back in the trailer. I found that to be not the easiest thing in the world to do. So found these used wheels off Facebook Marketplace, and they're made to fit on a Ram 2500, 3500. So they have the right bolt pattern. They're like 8 by 1.65, I believe. And they're 17 inches in diameter, 17 by 8. And when I upgraded the tires of the Jeep Rubicon 392 with the Extreme Recon package, I took its factory tires, the BF Goodrich All-Terrains, and threw them on here. These are a 35-inch tire, but they're in size 315, 70-17. So I wanted to list the pros and cons to the M1102 trailer. I'm going to start off by listing 4 pros, and the first pro being its off-road capability. The thing has ample ground clearance, and it comes with an articulating hitch, just the way it is. Like out of the box, you can take this thing off-roading and just beat the crap out of it. The bed is made out of aluminum. It's got a steel frame. It's just so robust. I mean, you gotta think about it. This is meant to be in a wartime scenario. So, I mean, if it can handle being out there, it can handle pretty much anything you can throw at it with its cargo carrying capacity. Which is pro number 2, and that is the carrying capacity of this thing. I mentioned before, it can carry 2,740 pounds. If you get the M1101, I believe that's about 1,000 pounds less or so. But you can pretty much load it up with anything you want. I think a lot of times these were used to carry generators or other very heavy equipment like munitions. One guy at a gas station, I get compliments or comments about this thing all the time, especially at gas stations. And a guy here locally in San Antonio, San Antonio is dubbed Military City USA for a reason. There's a lot of current active military and retired military. And retired, I guess he was retired, guy came up and said, he goes, the last time I saw one of those, we were carrying a generator on the back of a Humvee, and it just kind of brought back memories for the guy, I guess. And he just thought it was really, I guess, interesting to see a civilian taking this out. That leads me to my third pro of this, and that is the durability. I think I've already kind of mentioned this. The steel frame, the aluminum bed, the run flat tires. I mean, you just right out the box, you got something that'll just so robust. It's such a good platform to build an overlanding trailer for, or even any other sort of heavy duty haul you might have. I had some landscaping people one time that were eyeing it and just, you know, looking at it and thinking, and I think they were thinking like, you know, they could throw a bunch of gravel in here, a bunch of just load it up and it'll just take it. You know, the only thing is you got to get the right hitch for it, and because it's so high, I think that's one of the cons here. You got to make sure your tow vehicle, it might give it quite a bit of rake. And pro number 4 is the versatility. It can be modified for countless different applications. It has multiple tie-down points, both in the bed and around the outside of the bed, and it comes with built-in nutserts that you can fasten things to, like these crossbars that I had fabbed up, and you know, it's just so robust. There's so much you can do with it. I mean, I don't mind, you know, drilling into this. It's aluminum. It's not going to rust. The bed isn't going to rust. So yeah, very durable. And now we're at the cons of the M1102. And this is also one of the pros, but the carrying capacity. Because it has such a high carrying capacity, it can tend to bounce around a lot, especially when it's not super loaded, which I don't think I've ever put, you know, over 1,000 pounds in this thing. And when I'm off-roading or there's a lot of bounce in the road, it doesn't even have to be a lot of bounce. It's really amplified by how kind of stiff the suspension is. It doesn't have any springs, leaf springs or coil springs. It just has like a single axle with some shocks, and I've heard that those shocks don't really do a whole lot unless it's like got thousands of pounds loaded into it. But that can be one of its drawbacks, and I found that to be the case on a recent overlanding trip. From the bouncing, it kind of shook a lot of the items I had inside up and broke my camp stove, and you know, the bins I had weren't very watertight, and water got in there, and then one of the oil cans released oil everywhere. That was kind of a mess. That was the only time. All the other times I've taken out, I hadn't had any issues of things, you know, breaking from the shaking, but it definitely bounces around. I've done things like lowering the tire pressure, as people state. The factory tires, it's recommended to be at 17 PSI, and I ran them at 17. With these BF Goodrich all-terrains, I think I'm just running in like the 20s. Although I'm not sure, I don't quite remember what I had them at, but I wanted them to be somewhat low so it would absorb some of the bouncing. But that is definitely a con of it. If you're looking, got some delicate items in there that you don't want to break, this is probably not the trailer to put them in. Although I will say everything else seems to stand up pretty well, and it mainly is in the rear where you get the most up and down travel. So if you have like delicate items you don't want to get damaged, I would definitely put them in the front part of the trailer. So con number 2 is the Pintle Hitch, which again is also a pro because it articulates, it allows the trailer to just go up some insane angles. But that comes with a price, and that price is it's rather noisy. Now there are other better or different articulating hitches out there that'll be a lot smoother, like there's the lock and roll hitch, and but you know, this one comes with this already. It's already ready to go. That was what I really liked about it. I didn't have to get any special hitch for it, or you know, I had to find a special receiver to be able to tow this. But they're pretty common. I got this current one from Northern Tool. It's like around $100. And this one works great. I really like it. And because this trailer is so tall, as I mentioned before, if your vehicle's not high enough, it'll have quite a significant forward rake. And that can be a con or not. I mean, it tows fine, but it might have too much weight on the front end, and that can cause it to feel odd, but I haven't really experienced that. When I towed it with the Ram Power Wagon, it towed it like nothing, obviously, because the Power Wagon's tow rating was like 10,000 pounds, but it tows really nice, even behind the Jeep 4xe. I think the Mojave had the worst time towing it. It didn't really have a bad time, it's just you already had a longer wheelbase, and I had to use a hitch riser to prevent that rake from being too great. And I found out in Big Bend National Park that wasn't ideal, and it scraped ground a few times on the hitch riser, the hitch extension. I'm actually curious to see how this current setup will do now that I don't need that riser, and that this Jeep has heavy-duty springs in the rear, so this might not drag, and plus you got the shorter wheelbase, the better departure angle on the Jeep than the Gladiator. So I'm really curious to see how that'll do on the trail. So con number 3 is the size of this thing. It's 87 inches wide and 85 inches, hang on. "85 inches wide and 91 inches, and that's just the bed. The overall length is right around 136 inches, so roughly 11 feet from the pintle hitch to the very rear. So I mean, it's big. I don't think people realize how big it is until you see it in person, because it may not come across as being as big in photographs, but it's big. So far, it hasn't been so big that I haven't been able to take it down a trail. And I'm talking, pretty narrow 2-track roads, but it's definitely quite big. It's not as narrow as some of like the custom-built overlanding trailers that are available. And last but not least is con number 4, and I call it the registration, or the difficulty you might have registering it, depending on the state you live in. Here in Texas, they require you to have a title, and they require you to have some sort of VIN or some sort of identification number. And with this, I bought it from a guy who lived in a state where they didn't require that, so he didn't have any sort of title or transfer of a title to it. He just he gave me a bill of sale, signed off on it. I almost wasn't able to register this thing. It didn't have the plaque that normally comes on these, and there is an identifier there, and it was actually the police department that inspects these, and they wanted some sort of identifier. So luckily I was able to reach out to him, and he was able to send me the plate off of this, the original plate off of this. They just wanted some sort of identifier so that they know it wasn't stolen from one of the military bases here. That was quite a relief that I was finally able to register, because I bought this out of state, paid cash for it, brought it in state, and then they're telling me I can't register it. So depending on where you live, that could be or might not be an issue, but I just had to list that as kind of a con to one of these. If you buy something that's already built for overlanding, you're probably not going to run into that at all. So anyway, overall, I am just extremely happy with this M1102 trailer. I kind of look at it as my project trailer, even though I haven't really done a whole lot. There's so much more I have planned for this. I plan to at least paint it and put bed liner in it, get a different rack that kind of gets the tent up a little higher, so I got a little bit more room. But even as it is, even with it at this height, there's ample room in this thing. It's like, I don't feel like I have as much need for a truck bed from the Gladiator anymore, because I have this. It's kind of like a truck bed on wheels that'll go almost anywhere the Jeep can go. Also, what I should have mentioned as a con is the electrical system, because this runs off of a 24 volt system instead of a 12, which is what most vehicles here use. You have to get some sort of adapter in order to use the lights on this. And I did order this right here is the adapter. I can put a link to where I ordered that from, but that allows me to use to plug it into the 4-pin wiring harness on the back of my Jeep. The lights are pretty dim. They're just incandescent bulbs. I replaced some of them with LEDs, but they still seem pretty dim. It might just be the housings on the lights themselves are kind of scratched up and dirty, but there's replacements out there for that. There's actually there's a few websites that sell parts specifically for this, and Humvees that you can browse and replace different parts on it. And I know some people have actually converted the 24 volt to a 12 volt system, and they say it's really not that difficult. So if you're a little handy, or even not really that handy, this trailer can be such a fun project to work on. It kind of, to me, it's kind of what replaced my 2004 TJ, because that was kind of my project vehicle. I worked on it when I could work on it, and if I ran out of time, I had my other main vehicles to drive, and this is kind of like that. It's just kind of a work in progress. To me, it's just a really fun way and cool way to bring my rooftop tent, as opposed to having it on the Jeep. Although my end goal is to eventually have another rooftop tent on the Jeep and on here, so that way I can take the family out. We can have 2 of us in one, or some of these you can fit 3 people and somebody could sleep on the Jeep. And then if I just want to go solo, I can just take the Jeep because it'll fit all the gear that I personally need. But definitely when the 4 of us travel as a family, they want this to carry more stuff. And it's also nice just to have a trailer with camping gear in it loaded and ready to go. Those who go camping know, like, you have to prepare, you have to have a lot of times you have to have a checklist of things you want to bring. I keep this thing fairly loaded all the time. It's kind of like the bug out trailer. Like, if I want to just go on a whim and just have kind of the basic necessities to go camping somewhere, it's ready to go. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It can also, as opposed to being used on the Jeep, this can be detached and set up as kind of like a base camp. And then you can go exploring with the Jeep or whatever your tow vehicle is. And that's another con. That's kind of like I do have pros and cons of whether you should have your rooftop tent on your vehicle or on a trailer. They both have their pros and cons to them. But anyway, that is my M1102 military / overlanding trailer. If you're thinking about buying these, they're a really great buy. I really love having this around. There's just so many different uses you can have it, and people will give you compliments and look at you pretty much all over the place. It definitely kind of sparks some curiosity with a lot of folks. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.